is the terrifying truth that neither the left or the right in conventional Western democracies have any new ideas at all. Are we witnessing the end of social political culture as we know it? Is the simple truth that centrist politics, like most of us experience through the democracies we live in, is over and dead? And are the culture wars simply a way of distracting us from the fact that there are no original ideas on the table? In this conversation with the fantastic filmmaker Adam Curtis, we explore many of these themes. He talks about the way that we're afraid of death in our culture. He talks about the dearth of new ideas. I talk a bit about Fox News and how weird it is to sit and watch Fox and hear them championing anti-corporate ideologies on their channel. Adam Curtis is a fantastic filmmaker, a brilliant conversationalist, and he always has a unique and, I would say, prescient take on the day's events. This conversation is no different. Now, another thing, mate, that sort of struck me is that how come I can sort of like put on Fox News and watch Tucker Carlson talking about Robin Hood and GameStop enthusiastically, then get Glenn Greenwald on there and like talk about how like sort of Biden and Hunter Biden isn't being covered correctly, and sit and watch Fox News without disagreeing with anything they're saying for 20 minutes. These territorial lines are blurring. What's happening?
People are getting angry with some of the hypocrisy of the time, and it does cross over boundaries, doesn't it?
Yeah, it also further suggestion that there might be an emergent demographic that's available not to politics as we've previously understood it.
There's always an emergent demographic available to politics. It depends what story you're going to tell. I mean, to be brutal, you're talking like an HR manager now.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you just talked about an emergent demographic available to radical politics. I didn't actually hear an idea in there of the society you wanted to build, Russell.
I've already told you about my anarcho-syndicalism with some state regulation on centralised powers that it can initially emerge, and then a confederacy where people are free to establish their own ideals and rules. If you want to be a gun-toting libertarian, you go for it in your community of gun-toting libertarians. If you want to be an anarchist, pansexual, doing your thing wherever you want to do it, you can do it. The dissolution of state, the dissolution of centralised power, real democracy for real people, wherever they are in the world, a pan-global, trans-denominational confederacy. You create your reality. You create your culture. They're lying to you and they're laughing at you, and we will liberate you from them. Rather, you will liberate you from them by non-participation. Don't pay your mortgage. Don't pay your taxes. Join us on the front lines.
There is an argument that actually in real individualism hasn't happened yet, and that what we're living through at this present moment is, how would you describe it, the growing pains of an individualism that is hampered by the old ghosts of the past. In our country, the empire; in America, the racism from slavery, and it's holding it all back. And that real individualism hasn't been tried yet, the sort of thing you're talking about. And that, I mean, in practical terms, the first step would be to, because I mean, the thing you've got to square with this is that what you're talking about is an individualism that isn't going to go back into the box, yet somehow can have collective power at the same time. No one's ever managed to get that yet. In the old days of socialist and left-wing politics, you gave yourself up to a collective action. You're not going to be able to get people to do that now. Because people, you know, you're an arch-individualist yourself. You're one of the great expressions of it. You know that.
You say this to me sometimes, and I find it very wounding.
You know that you are an arch-individualist. What you also want to do, you want to feel part of something that is going to go on beyond your own existence and beyond your own life, but doesn't make you give yourself up to it completely. And there is an argument that that's what the internet could be. But in 2000, with the dot-com bubble, it got stolen by basically venture capital that took over a number of companies and skewed them to a very narrow focus on advertising. And that's where we are with Google. And that the real solution to the emergence of proper individualism is to get that internet back, take it back, and use it as a system that allows people to feel they are individuals, but at the same time feel they are part of something beyond themselves, bigger, and it's waiting to be done. That's the practical thing. Because the problem with your argument is, yes, you can have your anarcho pods outside in the mountains outside Barcelona, but how do you collectively come together to have power to challenge real vested interests? How do you do it? And no one's really worked that out yet.
But we've got to work it out now, Adam. We can't just go on going round and round in circles. And I will concur with your suggestion that perhaps it could begin with an online revolution and the reclamation of these spaces that ended up being colonised the way that all space is colonised, by people with the resources to enact that colonisation. That what started as an open territory where people could, yes, express myriad iterations of the individual, became a conformist, hegemonic space. That the same paradigm could be exercised there as has been exercised in physical spaces, has been exercised over physical resources. And perhaps you're right, that's a way to start, because it's certainly a way to create non-physical communities. But one of the things that concerns me as well is as you have alluded to and explicitly said, that these technocracies that present us as primarily that our role in life is to manage our own individualism, to manage our own bodies. And my belief in transcendence, my belief in the universal, is paradoxically both individualistic and, I would say, collectivist, in so much as I believe that whilst we are unique and individual expressions of a whole, we are connected, we are one. It's a religious view, I suppose, a hopefully non-dogmatic, certainly non-judgmental, certainly not prescriptive religious idea that embraces the sanctity of the individual. Now, you're right, it's possible now to communicate globally an appealing idea, and my sense is that there are a significant number of people that will be attracted to that idea. The idea of declaring yourself liberated, a kind of global manumission from the tyranny of our various owners, or at least the owners of the inner spaces and cyberspaces. So that's a nice little starting point, isn't it, Adam?
I've always liked the fact that you like religion. It's sort of, because I do think actually a lot of these socialism in this country came out of religion. It came out of Methodism, and that sense of being able to. I've always understood religion as its real attraction is that it offers individuals consolation in the face of their own death, their own mortality. That there is something beyond just you. It will go on, that you're part of something. That's an incredibly attractive thing to people. And I've always thought what's really interesting about a lot of the what are called rationalists that have risen up over the last 10, 15 years is that they're sort of scared of religion. And they're scared of religion because it does have that power. I'm not religious myself, but I can see it. I get it, because it does offer you something. And I do think that if there is going to be some new, you might not even be politics, something, it will borrow from that idea of religion. It's a really powerful idea, because it means that you know people in the Victorian era. The one thing people talked a lot about was death, but what they didn't talk about was sex. These days, we talk all about sex, and the one thing we don't talk about is death. That's why we also find the pandemic so frightening. And I think that it is the sort of the thing that no one talks about, yet everyone is terrified of, and that there is nothing that offers consolation in the modern world for that. Religion in its organized form certainly doesn't at all. And I think that maybe the politics of the future is going to have to embrace that kind of recognition that those grander feelings of separateness and aloneness are really important, really powerful. And you're going to have to answer them if you're going to change the world.
Yeah.
Because you see, the point is what we try to do, remember, if you're going to put this in a big historical terms, is that the reason we gave up on big ideas in the West is because big ideas were seen to have led to horror. Not seen to lead to horror, they did lead to horror. Communism, fascism, all kinds of totalitarianism. So we said, we're not going to do big ideas any longer. And what we did is we substituted not just individualism, we substituted money. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. We used money as a way of a means of communication. The marketplace became this really big way of how we talk to each other. And that was really good because it led to that, self-expression through consumerism, hyper-consumerism of the 80s and the 90s. But when you actually run a society through the medium of money, what you give up on is it becomes very utilitarian. Everything is measured in terms of money. And I'm not doing the normal thing about money being bad. What I'm saying is that it narrows your options for how you think about the world. Because if you think about the world in utilitarian terms, you're sort of on your own. It's what you do, what you get, and then you die. And I think a lot of people find that underneath quite difficult.
Yes, and untrue. The lens that you're applying to religion, may I say, is a sort of a rationalist and pragmatic and utilitarian lens to apply to religion. Like you'll say, it's a consolation for death. But also what it is a portal to that which is unknowable as an individual.
It's an expression. It's an expression. Look, you're quite right. I am being a rationalist, and I'm not being utilitarian.
Yes, you are.
It's an expression of everything we don't know. That's it. It's an imaginative attempt to express everything we don't know.
But even that is reductive because within that, Adam, I may say, is the assumption that there is no veracity in it. And what I am offering you is that religion and its universal expression, and I know this is an idea that you'll think of as rather passé, perennialistically expresses this truth. When in religion, e.g. Christianity, we talk about die unto yourself, that is not unrelated to the horror and certainty of this great contemporary taboo of individual death, that looming spectre that our current philosophy cannot ever tackle or even acknowledge. If you die unto yourself, then if you can become living dead, if you can observe your individual identity, first by observing your thoughts, then by observing your feelings, and recognize that you are in fact the awareness that observes the body, the awareness that observes a thought, that you are still present even so. If through psychedelic experience you access within the confines of your own body and your own mind, consciousness, experience that is beyond reason, that is beyond your senses. If through breath work and meditation you access psychic planes that are as real as this one, but that are never utilized other than, as in, as we've talked about before, like with the Wachowski sisters, create new imaginative realms born of imagination. We can dream new worlds. Where are these worlds going to come from? They're going to come from the mystical experience, whether that's through, scientific genius or artistic genius or religious genius, through the ability to recognize that no, you're not just a bag with some organs in it and some thoughts in it being shuffled about by whatever dominator culture happens to be holding onto the steering wheel in the short time that you are alive. You are a portal to the limitless. You can access this through yourself. You can have a real lived experience of God. In fact, your experience of life is God, that you have forgotten how to access because you have been acculturated and attuned to the mundial only. You have lost your legacy of the infinite. Now, Adam, I don't know whether that makes actual sense, but I reckon you could get people banging on a few palace gates off the back of it and storming a few Silicon Valley campuses. And isn't that, after all, at least part of our objective? If you're enjoying this conversation, join me over at Luminary for the rest of our discussion. For all the latest episodes of Under the Skin, go to luminarypodcast.com to start your free trial. It's a free trial, you might as well do that. Keep checking my YouTube channel daily for new videos. And if you like that Adam Curtis one, why don't you listen to Jason Hickel, who it says here in brackets was an economist. I remember him being very good. And Douglas Rushkoff, brilliant. You liked him, didn't you, Jem?
Yeah.
How would you describe him? Calm.
No, definitely not.
How?
Very energetic.
Energized.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, thanks for joining me on Under the Skin, and we'll be having the second half of that conversation with Adam next week. It's going to be where we get more into American politics, contemporary politics, and I finally put forward some ideas for how we could radically reorganise society, which is surely what you've all been waiting for. Thanks for joining me on Under the Skin, only from Luminary.